Donald Trump promised a golden age of America and a revolution of common sense, and he also described the current America as a catastrophic mess. Those are his words, and with that came some very big promises and a flurry of executive actions.
Yeah, strong words indeed. So illegal migration, the federal workforce, pardoning those convicted over the January 6 attack on the US Capitol, to name just a few. And in fact, just a short time ago, as I've been saying in the headlines this morning, that suggestion to scrap America's Federal Disaster Management Agency. But is it that simple? Does the US president have complete free rein to implement anything they want once they take the oath of office? Heath Brown is an associate professor of public policy and an expert on presidential transitions with City University, New York, who joined us earlier. And I began by asking him exactly what executive orders are and whether the president needs the support of Congress to actually implement them.
It's very easy to sign an executive order. It's why presidents do it, especially at the beginning of their term. Very hard to implement an executive order. Help from Congress in the United States system is really important. Most of these big issues that have been signed as executive orders need the help of Congress to actually have the effect that they're intended to have.
When it comes to the power the president actually has, just in recent developments, we've been told that he, at least suggestions that he wants to dismantle or overhaul FEMA, the National Disaster Response Agency, in the wake of its response to recent events. Can he actually do that?
Well, he can say it, and I think that what most people do at this time period, right as a new president is starting, is look at all of this as a wish list. A long wish list, maybe the longest wish list of any incoming administration. It will take time to figure out which of those wishes will actually happen. Getting rid of FEMA is one of the most significant ones for the security and safety of the American people. That will take much more than a signature on a piece of paper. That will take an act of Congress to actually execute. And so I think on each of these issues, it's easy to say it. It's much harder to actually do it.
And while we're on the topic of recent developments, we've also heard at least suggestions that he wants to revoke the security detail of Dr. Anthony Fauci, the infectious diseases expert. Now, he is suggesting, well, you know, you can't assume you have government-appointed security forever, but it makes me want to ask, to what extent do you think the president will start to exact revenge on his rivals?
Well, the threat of revenge is probably the most effective tool that a president or anyone really has. I think a lot of these things that are going on, including the threat to, or the revocation of security details, have the effect of getting people in order. I think that feeling of threat, that feeling that retribution is a possibility, sometimes works even if the retribution and the revenge never actually happens. And so I think there's a lot of symbolism going on here. Dr. Fauci is an important and very symbolically important person in this country, really in the world. And so for that reason, targeting Dr. Fauci can be very effective. I think the goal here is not focused just on Dr. Fauci. It's everyone else. It's trying to get everybody else in order. And I think that's ultimately what the objective is of some of these moves that seem so personal. I think, in fact, they're much broader than that.
In terms of getting everyone else in order, in your words, what signs are you seeing that Congress will actually be on board when it comes to following Donald Trump's agenda? I mean, is there a chance that Republicans themselves could slow things down?
I think there's a very great chance. And one of the reasons for that is elections are always right around the corner. And so an incoming administration can look to its last election as a mandate from the people. But members of Congress look ahead, and all of them, in the House at least, are looking ahead 2 years and saying, we're going to have to run again. And that time, Donald Trump isn't going to be on the up for election as well. And so they will all be looking at whether this is exactly the agenda they want to implement. I think we're out for a lot of surprises, and I think there's going to be a lot of Republicans who are actually getting in the way of Donald Trump's agenda. It's one of the reasons why Democrats in Congress have a lot more power than it might look like numerically. I think when it comes down to some important votes, they are going to be the integral votes. They're the ones who are going to be rejecting or accepting this agenda in common cause with a minority of Republicans. That's where I think the real action is going to be. And it's the reason why, even if Congress has looked like it's willing to go along with anything Donald Trump actually has said, doing it is going to be a very different thing.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you about, I guess, the haste involved here. There was a feeling that Donald Trump on his first day was trying to chase that headline. Is there a risk that he was so focused on delivering this massive first day as US president that perhaps some of those orders wouldn't have been thought through, that eagerness to act will actually come back to bite him?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. We don't know really right now. That'll bear out in the next couple of weeks and months. But writing even a single executive order that will pass muster in the courts is hard. Writing the number that have come out of this administration this quickly suggests a massive team working over the last couple of months. There's been no evidence that that team is quite that large. And what we might expect from that is the haste might have led to some errors in putting these executive orders together. We've seen some minor ones. We've seen typos. We've seen some grammatical mistakes. The real question is whether their haste has led to them making some mistakes in the actual wording of these and whether they'll be thrown out by the courts. I think there's a great possibility of that. We just don't know right now which ones those might be. But paying attention to that, I think, is really important.